He was lying, Jake Tapper. He had marching orders and was lying from the get-go. But we have been surgical with our attacks, with our gripes, with our criticisms toward Joe Biden.
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
Let me set this up. Former Vice President Joe Biden was, to everyone who could see, a cognitive, physical, and likely emotional mess from the moment he started his 2020 campaign, and those signs were there before. We made it very clear. The new revelations from Jake Tapper are not new. It was just like everything that we already knew. But his case right now is, we had no idea. This is in chronological order, and it by the way, it barely scratches the surface.
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
If you agree with me, go to Joe 30330 and help me in this fight. Thank you very much.
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing.
I forget the date, the 13th, and I think that
I'll lead an effective strategy to mobilize true international effort to pressure.
Please tell us by going to report fraud, dotftc.gov.
We went to 54 states.
I'm not being facetious. Well, President Harris led this effort to...
It's the least consequential part of this whole meeting for you, I promise. All right? God save the Queen, man.
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
Okay. Now for this next part to work, erase all that. You don't remember any of that,
yeah,
okay?
It didn't happen.
Because that brings us to Jake Tapper's book releasing today. And he told the LA Times, he said, "We were just lied to over and over again. If I learned about any of these stories in 2022, 2023, or 2024, I would have reported them in a second. Unfortunately, I had my fingers in my ears saying, la 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 la, la la la, can't hear you, la 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 la." So.
It's a lot of la 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 la.
Actual quote.
Yes, indeed. By the way, Jake, what about 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021? You don't have to just do the last 3 years of his presidency.
No. And we're going to go through the very specific examples. And like I said, with COVID, it's not, hey, what information did you provide us? What information was available to you at that moment in time that you actively discounted, eliminated, excluded at any cost? For example, like everything you saw and heard during the Biden campaign. But Tapper was nice to give a little bit of a hat tip to those in the conservative side for being ahead of the game. He said they were right, and that should be acknowledged.
Jeez.
At the same time, saying that the president's brain is turned to applesauce is not journalism. It's punditry. First off, we explicitly referred to Joe Biden's brain as, quote, 69% tapioca pudding.
That's true.
However,
Extra fact check. Much more nutritious.
yes. However, there were doctors saying we are seeing this. There were insiders, whistleblowers saying we know this to be true. There were many people pointing out, for example, like yours truly, montage of a very, very clear decline, and he all of a sudden developed a stutter, which you defended in his 70s. No one was just saying his brain is apples, and this is what they do. It's how they discredit this very show, the only show that provides references. They go, yeah, but then you called him a bloviating prick. Well, sure, but that has nothing to do with the metadata that we've been presenting to you. They try and focus on the punchline, and they act as though the substantiating, the corroborating information was never presented. It was denied, just like the Hunter Biden laptop.
Yeah, and why do you think nobody started with applesauce? We started with, hey, something's wrong with the president. He's he's stringing 17 words together and adding letters in there. And we're like, wait a minute, what's going on?
Yeah.
And then because nobody's listening, you start making jokes about it because it's so obvious to everybody else, but the media is ignoring it.
It's also hilarious.
That's what Jake Tapper, exactly. It is kind of, that's what Jake Tapper is just willfully looking over.
Well, they do this with the trans in sports, for example. Like you saw Gavin Newsom with Charlie Kirk saying, I'm like, well, and I'm against, and I think that obviously we know now, it's a science kind of comes forward, but conservatives they were being mean about it. No. They were presenting all scientific data available and also being mean about it.
Well, we don't have to we're not mean about it at the beginning, though. That's the thing. It's a point you just made. It's just pointing out the thing. Then they go, okay, no, ignore. And you go, no, look, here's the evidence. And they go, no, you are literally crazy.
Right. Exactly.
You're incredible. You're crazy.
Yes. And then they go, oh yeah, well, great. Now you're being transphobic. So let me present this to you. So excerpts from this book obtained by The Hill, because I got a good scoop.
Jeez. I mean, they're
being presented as brand new information, as revelations, as those in journalism like to say. Because, by the way, only these people can do journalism. Like getting to the bottom of Biden's cognitive decline in 2025.
Yeah, we'll figure it out one day.
So let's go through this. Here's the first revelation. They're acting like this is new. That we can't believe it. Biden didn't even recognize George Clooney after knowing him for all these years. This is there in The Hill. Like, oh my gosh, we got a scoop. By the way, we all saw this. You saw this play out in real time. You were told that it wasn't taking place. Clooney was so sad, he retaliated with a diss track. Well, I don't know how that'll play with Ryan Clark. Wow.
It'll be a #1 hit.
But here's the incident we all saw, for example. Biden, so now they're going, this is a revelation. How could he have not recognized George Clooney? Well, we all saw him claiming to have meetings with dead people.
I was in the south of England. And I sat down and I said, America's back. And Mitterrand from France looked at me and said, how long are you back for?
Twice in the last week, Biden has claimed to have meetings with people that have been dead for years or decades.
He sees dead people.
Twice in the last week.
Yes, he's Haley Joel.
He's either got this sixth sense that goes into another realm, or he's out of his mind.
He does have a sixth sense because he constantly smells burning toast and tastes copper.
That's true. Yeah.
Let's go to our next revelation. The Hill, like bombshell. Promptergate. Turns out, we now know that former Vice President Joe Biden relied heavily on teleprompters. And you're watching this going like, oh, do you mean like the teleprompter problems that we all saw take place live and pointed out and mocked as they were happening?
First, I think we have the one with the failed teleprompter on a live stream. Watch, it's sad.
Beef up the number of responders dealing with these crush of cases. And in addition to that, we have to.
And boom goes the dynamite.
We are in a position that we are. Well, let me go to the second thing.
It's sad.
The president must use the Defense Production Act.
Yeah, there is no second thing.
Yeah, we're just now finding out that he was relying on teleprompters. Oh, really? You didn't get a clue when Donald Trump literally said it?
Yes.
Before the debate, he said, he relies on teleprompters. We need to have no prompters at the debate.
It was one of the terms.
And then it ended his campaign?
Yeah.
What?
Or the clip that we just watched from 5 years ago.
What kind of you didn't apply any of your detective skills back then. Like, I wonder why Donald Trump is asking for this as a term of engagement. It seems he perceives it as some sort of advantage. Here's the next revelation.
So you can remember your words. Big whoop. You can think, woo.
For Donald Trump to make that demand means he is so supremely confident that Biden cannot handle himself off prompter that it's an unfair advantage. Revelation number 3 from the book, Tapper. That Biden, we now know, or at least the Hill now knows, and Jake Tapper, Biden seemingly staged in scripted events To which the rest of America responded, yeah, we know. He would.
Thanks, Jake.
He would have, like, we saw it, because he would call on a list of pre-selected reporters who he wasn't even supposed to reveal the list publicly, but he was so incapable, again, of using note cards and prompter that he would actually say the part he wasn't supposed to say. Oh, yeah, that's right. I have a pre-selected list for this scripted and staged event.
Biden began by saying out loud that he was given a list of reporters to call on. He said this. Here you go.
Okay.
I'll take your questions, and as usual, folks, they gave me a list of the people I'm going to call on. So, Jonathan, Associated Press.
Okay. Wow. So comparing this, again, where we're talking about...
You don't say the quiet parts out loud, bro.
It's all he does. As a position of strength. Yeah. Now, here's the issue you would have with Donald Trump. If Donald Trump had been given a list of reporters to call on, and they asked him about it, he would say, no, it's my list.
Yeah. I made it.
Because he understands that you don't want to look like a puppet.
But now, because they want you to believe that you still need, my God, legacy media journalists. Right now, they want you to, they're going, hey, psst, American public, a little birdie told me that perhaps there is a scandal beneath the surface that Biden was calling upon pre-selected journalists in staged events. Turns out what we were presented was less than authentic. If you tell anyone I told you this, I'll call you a liar.
And then they called Steven Crowder, unreliable and a liar when Steven Crowder suggested that maybe that phone call that sounded like a voicemail endorsing Kamala Harris might have been not so real.
Yeah, I agree. Bring up the previous overlay. I didn't realize the comment that they were making. If you can bring up that overlay real quick. Good. Now, so right here, the authors report that the campaign held a staged town hall last April in a high school gym to film a commercial. It was made to appear that Biden was taking questions off the cuff, but the event was closed to reporters and the campaign was given questions in advance. Like, that's the kind of stuff. It's not just the fact that he obviously has a list of people to call on. He's staging things to try to make it look organic. And I get it, but at the same time, like, he's going out there saying everything's totally fine and not taking any questions from the press.
Right.
And not having to answer questions off the cuff and make it appear as though he's actually all there.
And by the way, that's stealing a vote from the American public.
Yes,
because they deliberately were ensuring that the American public did not know what they were voting for.
And that's why the media didn't cover it. And that they need to come out and say that. Jake Tapper can't just come out and say, oh, we just found this out, and if I had known about it then. No, his journalistic credibility should be gone forever. He should never work again in this industry, and nobody should pay attention to what he has to say.
Well, here's the thing. Jake Tapper, either you truly are, and I don't say this as an insult, either you truly are like a monumental idiot.
Yes.
Or you're a liar. There is no door number 3.
Right.
I think it all depends on whether or not his appendix has a definition for propaganda.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Reference it a
Well,
few
you know
times.
what?
Yeah.
And that brings us, this was all by design from the get-go. Okay, so we just gave you some very specific examples. We're like, oh, this was happening. Well, yeah, because you saw it. And then if you called the administration or the will-be administration while they were campaigning, if you called them out on it, you were something, white supremacist, whatever excuse they were using that day, transphobic, whatever it is, MAGA, white nationalist. This was from the get-go. From the get-go, Tapper was running interference for Joe Biden, right, parroting the lie that the decline was, in fact, and it was offensive to make fun of, implying that it was a decline, when it's just a run-of-the-mill stutter. From the get-go.
I think you were mocking his stutter, and I think you have absolutely no standing to diagnose somebody's cognitive decline. I would think that somebody in the Trump family would be more sensitive to people who do not have medical licenses diagnosing politicians from afar.
Let me be really clear about this. Joe Biden doesn't have a stutter. Okay. In fact, it wasn't even Googled until 2019. I want to be clear. The only mention of it was somewhere in 2013. Like, hey, fun fact, he had it when he was a kid, and now he's claiming it. No, listen. He doesn't have a stutter. He didn't have a stutter. It was never even Googled. It was never even a defense until 2019. And you want to know how you know? Just go watch his statements at the Clarence Thomas hearings. Let's assume that he has a stutter. When people say that Joe Biden has clearly some symptoms of cognitive decline, and there have been many medical professionals who have said this, including people we've spoken with who don't necessarily want to talk on air because they don't want to get an audit if Joe Biden happens to win. That is not our primary gripe with Joe Biden. When you say that it's cognitive decline, you're not basing it on a stutter.
Yeah.
Right,
We're
yeah.
basing it on the fact that he makes no sense, and really our primary is that he just makes stuff up.
So who could have possibly known? 5 or 6 years ago, he was lying. Jake Tapper, he had marching orders and was lying from the get-go. Now, you could argue that we were just throwing shit against a wall and hoping it stuck, but we have been surgical with our attacks, with our gripes, with our criticisms toward Joe Biden. And we have consistently pointed out the cognitive decline and the contrast between him and his younger years. When he was young, he was a plagiarist. He had to drop out from his presidential run in the 80s because he lied about being valedictorian. He was bottom 2 in his class. And then we're saying, no, hold on a second. He didn't always have a stutter. This is inaccurate. So how could we, the non-journalists, have gotten every single call on this topic correct and Jake Tapper be wrong about every single one? I'd point you to the fact that he was running interference from the get-go. It's a stutter. And let's contrast that with the only example that you can find that's even remotely close, and the media dined out on this for days, was when Donald Trump had difficulty drinking water, which, by the way, I have to support my hand if I have tendinitis or something like that. And he was walking down a slippery ramp in leather-soled shoes.
The president reached for a glass of water during his national security speech, and Twitter took note. It has led to comparisons of how the president needs to use 2 hands, apparently, to drink from a water bottle. He did that during the speech last month and then again yesterday.
That was weird, right?
Not really.
She was just giddy laughing about it. Like, oh, see how bad he is? He's not going to be back in office. What an idiot.
It's like, hey, did you watch the rest of the speech? Did you watch the speech? Did he call on journalists who don't exist? Did he talk about meeting dead people? Did he read parts of prompter that were meant to be kept in your innie voice? Oh, he had to use a supporting hand for water. You ever had an injury? You ever had tennis elbow? Like, it's not even remotely comparable, and neither is their application. Same thing with the discussion on race. It's a media that is fundamentally dishonest, and now they want to champion themselves, the hero, the truth tellers. I'm going to tell you, those kinds of journalists, they only exist in the movies. It is a corrupt industry. You think the swamp of DC is bad? My God, the swamp of the media, entertainment, industrial complex is far worse. There's not a truthful bone in their body.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw, you can click around and watch one of these videos on YouTube, or head on over to Rumble and subscribe, where I am live every weekday at 11 a.m. Eastern. Live on Rumble. YouTube is dead. Rumble did it. And on Rumble, you can say